Okay, so I realize it's, like, not better, like, way high up. It's better if you, like, see my face, even though I'm reading. So, alright, we're on chapter 9 of basically the elite version of Hell on Earth. And it's my autobiography as a MK Ultra, like, in the MK Ultra, what if that's what you want to call it, slave system, as Mother Nature. Chapter 9. By the time I got out, the Archangel had left the body of my boyfriend and he had a new girlfriend. I was meant to feel inadequate, and targeted individuals more often than not lose the support of their family and friends, leaving them alone with no loved ones to turn to. I still had my family, just not many friends. There is a brain-to-brain interface and a brain-to-computer interface which feeds messages to your brain in the form of a stream of consciousness. It's a program they run in order to make people afflicted less credible to society, as there is nowhere to turn in the case that the government does target you. I started hearing streams of consciousness that weren't mine back then and had been locked out of all of my accounts, with passwords changed upon coming home. I knew at that point I was a targeted individual, I just didn't know to what extent. When I went to the psychiatrist, I was glued to my phone talking to Brock. It was like I couldn't look away. He had mentioned his ex-girlfriend putting a keylogger on his phone, and all the messages changed. Right before my eyes, the screen shook and it showed a bunch of messages I never wrote and were never written to me. I mean, glued to the phone. I mean, like, doctor was talking to me, couldn't get off the phone. Like, that's, like, the witchcraft and shit that they use. Like, doctor talking to me, not able to stop using the phone. Still texting while he's talking to me, like, not paying attention. Like, that's not like me at all. And I was at a psychiatrist's office. Do you know what I mean? But right before my eyes, the messages began to change while I was texting him after he mentioned the keylogger on his phone. Right before my eyes, the screen shook and it showed a bunch of messages I never wrote and were never written to me. Specifically, I remember a text from someone that gave the exact directions to the Archangel's house, or who the Archangel was in, his house, my ex-boyfriend. Some messages from me saying I had a great time with a person I hadn't even met yet. Some of them didn't even make any sense in the context of whatever conversation I was having with them. I went home terrified. I was unable to start pain medication again, as my doctor had been taken out of practice. He was forced to retire because he killed one of his patients. So this is like Horizon Medical, and their policy is if something like this happens and you try to go back to them and you were a patient of this doctor and you were taking pain medication, you were actually not allowed to go there again. Like, they actually, like, and that they have like a monopoly on a lot of places around here. Like, there's a couple doctors that aren't, but it's crazy how many Horizon Medicals are around here that I can't go to, like, how many doctors I can't go to because of this one doctor, just because of what I was prescribed by that doctor. He was forced to retire because he killed one of his patients. I had quit just in time and had been in a facility, so I detoxed in a controlled environment, which helped me get off of it because I didn't have an option. All of his patients were banned from ever going to Horizon Medical ever again. Tell me how that is fair, being that their doctor wasn't doing anything illegal, just getting payouts from the pharmaceutical companies every time he prescribed painkillers, which is common practice, and we were just his patients at their medical office. I went out with someone local to a bar in town just to get out and play pool. I was trying to get out because my license had been taken away pending a medical clearance. So I had been having blackouts. I was having after I met Brock, like, I had a blackout, and like it happened to me, and I hit a parked car, and it was just like crazy, and I got my license suspended. A man went up to him that looked much like you might think God would look, as if he was a person. He was an older man with relatively no wrinkles and stark white hair. He came right up to me afterwards and asked me one question. If it is a rainy night out with wet leaves all over the road and a motorcyclist goes into a bar and asks for a drink, is it wrong for the bartender to give it to him? I pondered for a moment, as it isn't illegal to serve someone in that situation, but it isn't morally correct to do so either. I responded, yes. He just looked at me and walked away. I went home wondering if God was working through people to tell me I was doing something wrong, even by just being out with somebody. It had seemed like the devil had been. That's like self-doubt, tests, like trials and tribulations, stuff like that. I was only 2 weeks out of the hospital when another possession ensued. I was watching one of my DVDs, Waxworks, and as I enjoy old horror films, and always have, and the screen became clouded white. A white demon superimposed itself on the screen. Hollow eyes, holes where its nose should have been, and spikes for teeth. In fact, its whole face was covered in spikes, and it was a pasty whitish lavender color. I ended up taking a handful of sleeping pills. I couldn't control myself. I poured them into my hand, and when I went to put them back, I took them instead. Right after I had just gotten out of the hospital, I saw myself going back as I didn't know what was going on, and I wanted to see if it would follow me. For at that time, I thought it was just my house that was haunted, but I would come to find out it was me. I checked myself in and couldn't control what I was telling the doctors. Words were just flying out of my mouth without any time to think about them. I was panicked and scared. I told them I was suicidal when in fact I wasn't at all. I told them I took the pills. Like I told them like that I shouldn't have been back at a hospital. It's like the last place I wanted to be, but I couldn't stop. I did want to see if it followed me, but I also couldn't stop myself from like going right back. Like from asking to go back, from thinking I was suicidal when I knew that I didn't want to take those pills. I was possessed, and with government intervention, I couldn't control what I was saying. The mafia hit had fallen through, and now they had me try and hurt myself. Taking those pills actually had the opposite effect on me. They were just like low dose sleeping pills, like really low dose, like over the counter super low dose sleeping pills. I was wide awake and grinning like an idiot all the way to the hospital. I remember very little of what happened after that for a period before I got admitted. While I was there, I saw a room that was under renovation turn upside down before my eyes. I had my hair stand straight up while I was brushing it, and there was no explanation. I just knew demons were now after me. Strangely enough, I said the Lord's Prayer with somebody because I got so freaked out that I was like, I started panicking. And it's actually the mother, so it's I didn't know what to believe at that time. The world all of a sudden got really small for me, and I lost hope, thinking God had abandoned me. One guy who worked with Access was inpatient there and kept telling me I could work if I wanted to, which was always so insulting because I didn't look sick. In actuality, I was worse off. The antipsychotics I was given had put me in so much pain I could barely walk. My muscles were in stitches. There was this one guy, a Jesus freak, who was spouting out scripture constantly. Regardless of what was going on with me, I wasn't going to buy into the Bible and Jesus because I knew I didn't really believe in it. You can't fake faith when you're being watched closely by both sides like me. He was talking to someone at that point. I heard him from my room. He said to the entity, "You have wisdom far beyond your years." He then said my age and my father's age, and I realized he was speaking to the devil. I also heard my phone ringing constantly while I was there. Now I know that the phones are a big part of programming in people. I was released with a totally different diagnosis of severe depression, as they didn't see any schizophrenia in my state at all in the time I was there. I never discussed what was happening to me with anyone but my family, as it wasn't of this world. They didn't believe me. They offered up an alternate reasoning for the things I was experiencing, like someone was messing with me. I didn't blame them, as it was something I would have said before this started happening to me. I knew it was many someones. I just didn't know the relevance of it all yet, and I didn't know it was Satan himself that wanted my soul. My mother had used to meet me with a friend who was psychic, and her friend told her that Brock would be bad for me. I just never imagined how bad. I would be watching the television with my parents, and captions would run across the screen. "You are an emotional black hole." I knew they were meant for me, but test in all capital letters ran across the screen, and it had a dual meaning. The archangel used to purchase testosterone and call it test. On another occasion, God with like DAMMIT, like 6 asterisks, ran across the screen, showed up on the screen. I wasn't even supposed to say God damn it. Seriously, I felt that whoever God was, they were judging me harshly and far too early. I didn't yet know that the male God was a fake Bible God that was molded to make people follow him. The Bible was holy because there were holes in it. My favorite TV show was Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. One day the caller ID showed Gary. Gary is the silly, stupid main character of the show. He is a demon in an office that is hell. In fact, while I was working at the pump factory, I wrote down the outline for a show, and it was exactly like that of Your Pretty Face is Going to Hell. Right down to the ego-driven, low self-esteem Satan that runs it. Like, I did this whole TV show. Like, I started writing, it was in an office and thinking of certain scenarios, and this show pops up. Upon getting home, I decided to write the archangel to tell him how I felt. I was so hurt by the situation, and I felt abandoned because I did love him. So much so that when Brock asked me to tell him a story about the archangel, I froze up and froze up. I sent him a poem. He followed her blindly into the darkest caves, the ventricles of her heart, blood crashing in caves. Red rosy ruby, it flowed quickly through the veins of disdain he hardly knew. That the blood had been poisoned with betrayal and hurt, the heart had been broken, from her veins it would spurt. The damage was done, forever to remain. Capillaries could not hold back the flow of this pain. Lies laying down and loyalties lost, couldn't be left behind. In her world without passion, what love could she find? Kind and gentle she thought she could be, but the glass that was broken drew more blood, you see, because forgotten but not lost were the memories that passed, tearing her heartstrings. How long could this last? Just long enough to ruin their love. Paranoid and dependent, push came to shove. She got scared, couldn't cope, ran away, she bled hope. She left alone, hiding away. All desire had flooded out. He turned away from her, and she began to shout. Her tears were her passion, her sadness her fate. Her heart was now shattered, for she was too late. The archangel came back to me at one point and tried to get me to be his side chick. It wasn't the archangel anymore, though. He had like left his body. His girlfriend was pregnant. We went to go meet a friend of his from work or something. He called her his wife to his friend in front of me, and I almost puked in my mouth. Is this how men really deal with women? Do they think they're superior to us in some way as to act so conniving and hurtful? I asked him if he had ever cheated on anyone and told him the repercussions. If you have a guilty conscience like I've always had, it will destroy anything you feel you have in that relationship, especially if you're going to have kids. I told him how if he caught herpes and she didn't know she had it, and she got an outbreak during the birth, her baby could be born blind. I held onto his hand, looking for any form of warmth after what he had asked me. Even the idea of being someone's side chick made me nauseous, as it made me out to be some kind of whore. He asked me to feel me up before I got out of the car, stating that he was a boob guy, and I let him even though I didn't want to. I was either chipped for compliance or just conditioned for it, as even when I was being raped, I would say stop, but rarely no. I grew to have a hard time saying no at all, and it was part of the MK Ultra project compliance. I think vaccines have like compliance chips at birth, and it's possible that people who are non-compliant like become autistic or something like that, or it bypassed me, but it bypasses some people. There are still people who are non-compliant and they bypassed it, but I think there's like some of the like really heavy psychics are made the empaths or the heavy empaths, something makes them autistic when the vaccines are given. Compliance law is a big part of the system. I went right back to talking to Brock, as I was still drawn to him. Shortly after I woke up to a message, a relinquishment spell. Because language is the spell. I wrote it down and called Brock. What I told him, it wasn't a relinquishment spell, I guess, but language is a spell. So I wrote something down along these lines. What I told him was unbelievable. I had seemingly just given up my heart, my body, and soul to a career criminal who I barely knew, although I never went back and fulfilled the spell. I wrote it down and it disappeared out of my notepad. I was in a trance when I did it, completely dumb happy as if I was doing something good or romantic. He responded with, "Hell yeah." I snapped out of it at that moment, but didn't think much of it until the phone started growling at me when I talked to him and the demons began following me. When I wasn't busy telling stories, Brock and I spoke about everything. He was my best friend at the time. He told me the most important thing I know to know is the law. I did a background check on him and found out that he had 13 felonies. That number again, 13. He was also on a government watch list. I was on a website where there was a score to find what kind of person you were. His was 1 out of 100. I didn't let it sway me from him. We weren't busy when we weren't busy having phone sex. I read him my poetry. He loved hearing my pieces. I have many more about demons chasing me, but I have to come to the point of in manifestation where what I write becomes reality. So I will only share two. If it does, actually, I found out if it doesn't align with your higher self, then it doesn't become reality. She pulled back the curtains to feel the sun upon her face, for she had never realized its warmth was God's grace, as was the rain falling down from the heavens above to irrigate, as was oh, sorry, let me start over again. She pulled back the curtains to feel the sun upon her face, for she had never realized its warmth was God's grace, as was the rain falling down from the heavens above to irrigate the ground with all of its love. The flowers came up as the droplets poured down. She reached into the dirt, her hand covered brown. She grabbed at the seeds to see beginning of life, so pure and so fresh, with no pain and no strife. She smiled her sadness, she wept without tears. She had fallen again for each of her fears. She ran to the mirror to see a nightmare, but a daydream stared back, beautiful and fair. How could something so ugly, untrusting and vain, maintain its beauty amidst its disdain? She couldn't see grief, but she felt all her flaws, yet her reflection defied all the laws. She turned on the faucet to wash the dirt off her face, but she couldn't clean off the pain and the hurt. To wash off the dirt, but she couldn't clean off the pain and the hurt. She went back to her bed as the moon shadows cast, shutting her eyes for a short time at last. And I wrote another one. I used to read another one to him. Forgetful feelings forged in the prison of one's mind. Cold concrete floors dying of remorse. Solemnly slow, forfeiting freedom for a flippant fantasy. Surrendering soundly for future failures. Pathetic plunder into the arms of angst. Failing, fast, flushed into the cage of a criminal. Falsified and defeated, frowned on fundamentally. Stolen is my soul, rationalize my role. My heart only hollows, faint I feel forgotten, belittled and begotten, prejudiced and proud, illegitimate and loud, masterful I mourn, fretful and forlorn, disrupted and delighted, betrayed and breaking down, lonely and self-loathing, I fall into the floor, wailing with the wall, crazy who to call, where to wallow now, feelings only foul, bring me to the bow, sad from the start, now I fall apart. I started researching paranormal activity and was up until the wee hours of the morning watching the videos. I found one, dialing 666-666-6666. Scary phone call by Live Sci-Fi. That actually said my name at the end of the video. It showed Sally's name spelled out in block letters on pieces of paper. The location of the video was supposed to be the Sally house in Kansas. Sally was a little girl who haunted the house, and some people believe that she is a demon. The video was a playback of a voicemail. It says, Kate Siegel, now you're mine. You can look it up. It says my fucking name. It's very clear. I believe that it is Satan saying this, and it's terrifying. I thought for sure I was going to hell. One day when I was alone in the house, my vision went completely black for about 3 minutes. I was terrified. Took a couple steps down the hallway and my heart stopped. I clutched at my chest as it was one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. The demons wanted to show me what kind of control they had over me. I didn't sob, I didn't scream, and I didn't break. My mother came to me one day with messages from my dead aunt on Facebook. She showed me a message that listed my mother, my brother, and my nephew all as being good and left out my father and myself. She had told people in the family my mother and I were evil before she died because she became very godly and for some reason was talking badly about us. I wondered what she knew that I didn't. I had noticed my cigarette smelled like her periodically, as I never said goodbye to her before she died, and I loved her very much. She had bone cancer, and I thought she might hang up the phone if I called, so I didn't. I remember feeling my blood run cold when I read it. I wonder why we had been left out. I knew my dad wasn't evil, so what were we? I would have never classified myself as evil before. I thought I was a really nice person, and as for my father, he was exceptional. Then why did the message completely leave us out? I went out with people to break up the panic and the terror in my life and try to get away from it, even for a couple hours. And I was possessed like a lot. I'd gone out with a Muslim guy on one occasion, and he brought his work truck to drive me around in. We ended up doing some pretty light petting, and he freaked out afterwards and started praising Allah. I thought it was crazy. Even in my situation where I had demons after me, I wasn't praising God for any reason. I was still convinced he hated me, and I was just trying to enjoy the little things in life. I couldn't wait to get out of there, and I backed out of the cab and missed all the steps. I had to jerk my shoulder up to avoid cracking my head open on the pavement. I just sat up and walked back to my house. I had an indentation where something had seemingly snapped in my shoulder, but all I really knew was it hurt like hell. The rapes began with the introduction of the COVID vaccine. More rapes. I mean, like, it didn't begin, but it started getting intense. With the introduction of the COVID vaccine. I had no idea that demons were working through people, that they furthermore worked through technology. I didn't look too much into how demons work and conduits. And you can't find anything they work through energy, so you have to deduce that they work through technology. There's not a lot of stuff. I was too naive to think that a demon was in somebody I was talking to, even when it was presented with the very obvious that he was a bad person. I went out with a lot of guys, although I didn't have sex with the majority of them. Those that I did have sex with was because I was made to feel that I had been bad to men, so I owed them something. And then I'd have, like, possessions. I guess this is, like, MK Ultra sex slave stuff. Like, if I fought it, like, I could say no, but sometimes I didn't have the option. I thought I was already going to hell and God hated me, so why not just get out of the house at least? I wasn't living. I was busy every day dying. Charles was friends with some of my friends on Facebook from college. I thought it was safe to go to his house and hang out. I was microdosing shrooms at the time for my shoulder injury. He had told me he had herpes as well, and I would be the only person he could have unprotected sex with. I clarified that I wasn't interested in sex. I just wanted to hang out, and I saw that we had friends in common. He laid out a couple of lines in the apartment, and I didn't watch him do it. I had actually never done coke at this point. He had laced mine with GHB. I've only done cocaine a few times in my life, but I knew there were drugs in it because I began passing out. He raped me on the couch first. I remember my body was hanging off of it from the waist down while he used the bottom half of me. The second time he took me upstairs. I was hoping he was going to let me sleep. I have no recollection of the second rape. I just know it happened because I was pleading with him not to the third time because they were so close together and I didn't want to get pregnant. The male penis milked semen for up to 35 minutes after ejaculation. He videoed himself raping me the third time. I was in fetal position and kept hitting my head on the wall. When I wrote him on Facebook about the rape, he tried to tell me we went for pizza the next morning, when in fact he popped up after the third time and put me in an Uber, sending me home. It was unreal. I was still hazy when I got home and just wanted to sleep. I never went to the police because I never went to the hospital. I didn't want to deal with it, and it became something normal to me far too quickly. Conditioning was involved, and my past lives have a lot to do with why I detached when it happened. Another guy that I went home with from the bar raped me. I told him I wasn't going to have sex with him and laid down parameters. He tried to put his penis in me, and I went into PTSD mode. I was rocking against the wall and repeating, I want to go home, I want to go home. He picked me up by the armpits, threw me on the bed, raped me vaginally, and then sodomized me. I blacked out. I didn't black out through the entire thing. It wasn't a blackout. It was like an out-of-body experience, to clarify that. Because I said I blacked out. I didn't black out. It was just complete out-of-body. The third man I also went home with from the bar. I had parameters for him as well. He sodomized me incredibly hard and dry. He must have hit the nerve in my rectum that can cause death, because I began twitching, shaking, and sweating profusely. The pain was extreme. Like, we were supposed to, I was ready to have like regular sex, and he did that instead. The pain was extreme. While I was on the couch trying to get my bearings, he came out dressed and told me to get dressed as he was taking me home. I couldn't even move, and he didn't even ask me if I was alright. It was disgusting. I must have blocked out some of their names because I couldn't tell you if my life depended on it. Frank was a cop, and he told me he had herpes and then took it back, which just meant he didn't tell anyone he has herpes normally. When I got to his apartment, I went to get a glass of water, and his Valtrex was in the cabinet. He said, "You know what that is." When I told people I had herpes, men didn't seem to care, and didn't want to use condoms anyways. In some cases, they left them off when I insisted they wear them. That is exactly what the cop did. He left it on the nightstand. And told me to bend over. I happened to see it and asked him, "Do you fuck a lot of girls raw?" And he responded, "Yes." I was slightly horrified, but didn't want to show it. And I couldn't really stop it. It didn't cross my mind, which is very weird. It was the worst sex I've ever had. Neither of us were really turned on, and he didn't finish. I asked him why on the way home the next day. He said, "Well, I wanted to shit on you." I couldn't believe my ears. He had told me about a girl he was dating the night before who destroyed some of his property when he tried to break it off with her. He said she went crazy, and all I could think of is if I let you rub shit on me, I probably would go crazy too. If you didn't want to see me anymore too. Girls with no self-esteem allow shit like that, literal shit like that. There were 2 instances of people not using condoms when I insisted, and I do believe that is considered sexual assault, or it should be, as I didn't take birth control. In the case that I did get pregnant with either person, I would be faced with either an abortion or keeping an unwanted pregnancy. In the case that they had a different STD than I did, and I caught it, it would be because the condom wasn't used. That should be fucking illegal. I didn't go to the police because the first time I did, they seemed to dismiss me. I had become accustomed to being raped, and throughout my past lives, rape had become something that was normal to me, and that had followed into this life. Afterwards, I never wanted to go to the hospital. I just wanted to go home. It was all I could think about. I feel bad that I didn't go because of all the other women that might have fallen at the hands of my rapists. I could have stopped them from continuing to think that they could get away with such things, but all I wanted was to go to sleep. The government was controlling that every time. If I had had the energy to go, I would have gone, but afterwards I was emotionally drained and so exhausted and probably in shock that I barely made it home without passing out. I sometimes would sleep for a whole day after the encounters and then have it wiped out as if it never happened. You have like a recollection of it, but you just seem to emotionally after you take your time, sometimes it was as if it didn't happen to me. Like, I knew it happened, but it was as if it never happened to me. It became somewhat of a game to the elites, I'm sure. Everything is a game to them. One of them was a cop who was going to listen to me, and that was part of the game as well. The police are owned by the Masons. Most of my consensual sex encounters were unpleasant. I wasn't even enjoying myself. In fact, I had started to not black out during them, but just I didn't feel anything. Everything from when it began to when it ended, I have little to no recollection of. I just have like flashes. Everything from when it began, or I know it always hurt a little bit. I was just trying to get it out of my head for a while as I was waking up every day in a panic. I didn't stop going out because of it, though I knew that one person could be potentially a murderer. It could be anyone. It didn't have to be so literal. I felt like I was already dead. For Valentine's Day, Brock wanted me to go and see him. I was reluctant because I was in too much pain to take 2 to 3 trains there. I thought if he really cared, he could just come pick me up. I went out with someone just to get out of the house to smoke. I called Brock from the bathroom because I felt guilty for not going. I told him I was out with a friend, and he laughed, but then I heard a man sobbing in the background. I was hearing Lucifer crying. As I mentioned earlier, the phone began to growl at me when I talked to Brock. Part of me believed that he might be the devil at this point. When I told him about the haunting, he made a paranormal video making fun of me. It really hurt my feelings. I kept talking to him until one day he was suffering from severe pain. He was convinced he had appendicitis. I thought he was just being a baby because jerking off would be the last thing he would want to do if he indeed had would be the last thing he wanted to do if he indeed had appendicitis. I talked to him instead of having phone sex with me. I told him it might be his liver, and he snapped at me and called me a fucking bitch. I hung up the phone. No matter what, no one was going to talk to me like that. He called me right back and apologized and had some justification for why he had said that to me, but that small moment made me not want to talk to him anymore. Especially because now I kind of found him pathetic for being so desperate for a story that he would resort to cursing at me out of frustration from not having one. I never knew much of mysticism or gods and monsters. We weren't raised in a religious household. I never thought hell existed. In fact, I was always in my own personal hell, being as sick as I was. I told my mother about the contract when these things were happening to me, and she was upset with me. She asked me why I would do such a thing, and then I asked myself. I hear it wasn't a contract. I didn't sign it, nor did I sign it in blood. It was a spell of some sort, but it didn't work. Why I would do such a thing, and then I asked myself. It felt like something had taken over me when I wrote it, and I had had a dream that I had done it in, and it carried over into reality. Project Dream Scan. I had an epiphany in November 2021 that I could simply take it back if I hadn't died yet, and I did. I sent Brock a message taking my soul back, and then I blocked him on Facebook. They said that I never took my soul back because they never had it. I had a contract with myself. Because of who I am. I'm I'm God. That's why this all happened to me. Or Mother Nature. I eventually saw my future with Brock, and kind of like the way I saw my future if I hadn't stayed with the Archangel. It was more like a movie reel. He had been trying to get. I kind of saw my future with Brock kind of like the way I saw my future if I hadn't stayed with the Archangel. It was more like a movie reel. He had been trying to get me to talk to the stockbrokers for hints of the trade in a sexy outfit in one of these chat rooms where they discussed trading. I wouldn't work for him because I wanted a relationship and not a job. He couldn't use me like that, and I hadn't given him my tax ID number. The FTC would have found me guilty and not him if someone gave me a tip that resulted in being an insider trading tip. If I had done either, I would have been locked up for insider trading. If he had me do both, he would have owned me, and that's how Lucifer works. He uses the power of seduction. Just so happens I investigated one of his past businesses and came to find out that the company was documented with a charity for animals, but never donated to them. I saw that he was in business with a woman upon finding a picture. I couldn't help but think. He took her for everything she had. Chapter 10. As I said, I was under the impression that I was going to hell because I was mean to men. I had only left men who didn't treat me well, and I had never thought twice about it, but it was the only conclusion I could come to. How was I supposed to feel? I was sick my whole life, and now demons were after me. I also thought maybe I did something really bad in a past life, and now I had to pay for it. Self-doubt and guilt are my so-called demons, and they are the things that haunt me. I thought I would eventually be going through a possession, and I didn't want to be alone for it. I didn't realize that I had been going through possession since I was a kid.